transforming musical linguistic objects, elf machines.
Greetings from Cyberdelic Space. This is Lorenzo, and I'm your host here in the Psychedelic Salon. And I'd like to begin by thanking our fellow saloners who either bought a copy of one of my books or who made a direct donation to the salon recently. I think that I've contacted you all via email by now to thank you. And Corey and Michael, I'll be getting a snail mail thank you out to you as soon as I get back from this weekend's trip to Esalen. And to the donor who felt bad about only sending $5, hey, I want to let you know that during my own college days, I would have had to borrow $5 from my roommate in order to make a donation. So I understand what that amount can mean. And just to let you know, your donation was just what I needed to get over the hump this month that kept me from having to tap into my savings to pay this month's hosting bill. You know, in this day and age, every little bit helps, and you have done your part to keep these podcasts rolling along. All of you have, so thank you all very much. Also, I want to thank someone who goes by the handle K. Cycloid, who is the very first person to review my novel, The Genesis Generation, on Amazon. And while that book has been out in audio format since 2009 and on Kindle for a while now, until now, there have been no customer reviews, and so this was a very big deal for me. You see, many of the authors that I know get all of their friends to write reviews, and that, of course, does a lot to drive up sales. But since I haven't done that, there haven't been any reviews of my books on Amazon so far. And ultimately, it's those online reviews that drive up sales. So, K. Cycloid, I humbly thank you ever so much for your kind words, which I actually found overly generous, but I'll gladly take your compliments anyway. Now let's get on with today's program, which is another recording from the Timothy Leary archive. The recording of this talk was given to me by Bruce Damer and initially came from Dennis Berry, who at the time was the custodian of the Leary archive, and I thank you both for passing it on to me. Now, that file had the following annotation associated with it, and I quote, Timothy Leary, Band 2-A, Humor, John Lilly, Hands-On, Turn On, Drop Out, and Take Over, plus Band 2B, Stage 12, Body Management, Self-Reliance, Purpose of Life, Tape 2 of 4. And that's all I knew about it until I previewed it. By the way, there was no tape 1 of 4 that I can find. But after listening to this tape, I'm relatively sure that it is a recording of a small, maybe even private salon with Dr. Timothy Leary that was held in someone's house somewhere in Germany in 1983 or so. It begins with an evening talk that abruptly cuts off after about 25 minutes and then picks up on the following morning. And you'll be sure to know when that cut takes place because the morning session begins with the sounds of both a baby and a bird in the background. Eventually the baby quieted down, but that damn bird squawked off and on for quite a while. However, I was able to delete most of the bird noises whenever they didn't come at the same time he was talking. My guess is that this was a very small crowd, and that may be why the good doctor doesn't seem as enlivened as we've heard him in the past. In fact, throughout this first tape, he had some really long pauses between many of his thoughts, and I've done my best to cut those out too in order to make it a little easier to listen to. Now, while this may not be the greatest lecture that Timothy Leary ever gave, there are quite a few interesting little gems here that I hadn't heard him say before. And I also think that it's really kind of interesting to hear him in such a small, intimate setting, which is the way that some of our fellow saloners got to know him during the last decade or so of his life in very small groups. So from a number of perspectives, I think that this will be of interest to you, but you'll have to be the judge of that yourself.
I think you can only go as far out as you have mastered the lower forms of intelligence. So that if I didn't learn to speak and think logically, then I wouldn't be able to understand the higher levels. The same with the body. In the 1960s, 8 million American people took LSD, which is a brain drug. And a lot of them were not in touch with their bodies. They did not have confidence sexually, or didn't like the way their bodies looked. or they didn't know how to move their bodies. So when they take LSD, they way up there and they look back, and they wouldn't like their bodies. So you have to have body intelligence before you can go on. You really must, and that's why the workshops here, and the dance, and the yoga, and the Ann Halpern, and the Feldenkrais, and it's good. Because you have to master each level. You have to know how to, yes, you have to know ABC and 2, 4, 6, 8 before you can use computers. Well, I think that the universe, as we can imagine it now, galaxies and universes and black holes and constellations and star systems and planets and Earth and then planet Earth and biology and all that, it's enormous field of intelligence units. I think everything, sunlight, starlight, comes in packages of information, and it's intelligence. So I think everything is intelligence, energy intelligence, and it comes in different packages. And as Einstein says, E equals mc squared. Everything is energy, and to me, energy is intelligence if you know how to receive it. So that matter and everything is energy at different levels of acceleration.
That I understood as part of your theory.
Pardon?
That I
Yes,
understand
and these levels of intelligence are little clusters of the overall. And an amoeba has its own universe, but then as we evolve, we get to be able to receive more. Intelligence, to me, the way we define intelligence is the amount of information, energy you can receive, that you can store and retrieve, and that you can transmit. And that would include human beings now can receive information from galaxies hundreds of billions of light years away. We can measure nuclear particles in the linear accelerator that exist sometimes millions of a second. We can measure those. So we're becoming smarter because we're getting information from the smallest, quickest to this information that's coming over the billions of light years. And we are being able to store and use this information, but to transmit it, because we can make nuclear fusion is making a star. We're almost, the one thing we have to do now is learn gravity. When we learn how gravity works, we can literally make galaxies. We can make black holes. So that's transmitting, because it doesn't do much good. You can receive and understand unless you can do something with it. And intelligence, to me, is and also intelligence, you're continually open to new ways of receiving, and then that has to change your models of programming and reception, so you can improve your transmission. And space migration is just one step in that direction. We're sending out signals to other stars and so on.
How are we going to What were, if you don't mind telling us, what were the sort of the 3 key things in your life, sort of either experiences or maybe you would call them revelations, or that sort of determined the ground for your epistemology?
Well, I can't say my life. I've lived a long, long time.
Yeah, all right. So,
how about the last year? 3 things in the last year that totally changed my mind? Yeah. One is computers.
Yeah.
Computers and video games have totally changed, double my intelligence.
Yeah.
The second thing is a drug called ketamine, which John Lilly.
That's great.
Yeah. Totally. Now, for the first time, I understand out-of-body experiences, and I really understand. And third, life extension pills. I take life extension pills and rejuvenation pills and so forth, so that these have I think give great hope. And also personally, they've changed me. So,
The drug.
ketamine is a drug. Yeah, it's a drug which is there's a man named John Lilly who's coming next year.
Yes.
If you can get him.
He's coming.
Well, yeah. He may be here, but not here.
Oh, that's
Anyway, he definitely hasn't come yet. There's a man named John Lilly. John Lilly is one of the greatest, I think, philosophers, scientists that I've ever known. He was one of the first scientists to do LSD research for the Navy intelligence. But instead of giving LSD, he took it and then he left the Navy. He was the first scientist who really studied communication with other species. And so he did all the dolphin research. No question, if people came from another planet and said, what single human being has tried to get beyond the human, to communicate, to listen to other species, John Lilly's almost by himself. Some of the ethologists, Murray and Lorenz and Zimberger and some of the naturalists have done that. Lilly is very special. John Lilly has developed the first theory of the brain as a computer, called the biocomputer. And he just opened up that whole new way of looking at the brain and new way of looking at LSD. And I think you cannot understand LSD unless you understand Lilly's theory that the brain is computers reprogramming and metaprogramming the brain. Those are three very big discoveries. 4, he discovered or introduced the isolation tank, which is very useful. I don't like it myself. It's a very useful technique. 5, he's using computers to talk to dolphins, and he's taking dolphins' signals and putting them in the computer. And then 6, he has taken this new drug called ketamine. Ketamine is a drug that takes you, I'll get to that tomorrow when we get to the higher levels of intelligence. It takes you out of your body, and you really are in your brain and beyond. And he has gone just so far out than any human being has ever been. And he can still come down and talk about it. But he's a little hard. Because it's very boring for him down here. If he were here, he came into one seminar I gave an estimate about a month ago. He came in one night and he had taken this drug ketamine. You stick it, not in a vein, but just stick it here. Huh? Yeah, in your mouth, yeah. He came into my seminar and he sat there, and Stanislav Grof was there, and I was there, and some of our friends, and he felt that he was with a group of people that could understand him. And so he really, for 2 hours, rather than on videotape, he talked, he was way out there on ketamine, and he was talking about, and then he said, now he said that, I don't say that, he said, shoot up or shut up. Anyway, John Lilly.
All right.
And that's an answer. Lilly's teaching is one thing I've learned in the last year, and computers and video games, which are very important, I think. And life extension, I have several friends in America who are scientists who study life extension and stopping the aging process. And they're right there, within 2 to 5 to 10 years of discovering how to stop the aging process through immunology, antigens, and DNA repair. And they're even the number 1 or number 2 bestseller book in America right now is called Life Extension. It's by a man named Dirk Person and his wife Sandy Shaw. So there's a large group of scientists in America who are studying life extension. And we'll get into that tomorrow when we get into higher level. See, it's very intelligent to be able to live as long as you want to. It's stupid to die. So we'll get into that tomorrow. You want to say something?
What are the adverse forces of evolution in your theory? Forces, energy.
Well, it's obvious that the blocks to evolution are anything that keeps you from changing or discourages you from changing. And almost all of the religions tell you, don't change. Right. And you're worthless, you're helpless, you just live for 70 years on like a little bug on a planet, so the only thing you can do, right. I think religion and the political systems and scientific systems that say anything that keeps you from changing, and anything that keeps the individual from loving themselves and worshiping themselves and going within and trusting themselves, anything that keeps people from being courageous about change is a block to evolution. And we all have these blocks in us too, so that not just them out there, it's in us as well. You cannot generalize about drugs. You have to take every individual where they are, and there is a the number one book in America last year was called it's about this lady in England who trains dogs, Barbara Woodhouse, was she in Germany? And her book is titled, "There Are No Bad Dogs. There are only stupid or neurotic owners." And I say the same thing about drugs. There are no bad drugs. There's stupid people who don't know how to use them. Stupidity is the cause of all danger, whether it's a gun or an automobile or even a ballot to vote. Anything can be, reading and writing, anything can be dangerous. But we'll get into that. I'm going to talk about drugs tomorrow. Want to say something?
You're happy?
Happy?
Yes.
Yes.
I am too.
Yeah. Good. Good. It's coming to Germany is very interesting for me, and it's hard because I'm moving from city to city. I'm a little tired. I'm a little sad about Europe. So I'm not happy because I love Europe. I come from Europe, and I think that Europe is very sad right now. More so, I think. So I'm not totally happy, but it's good. I feel good. I think there's a pessimism among young people in Europe. Not all, I know, again, I might be wrong. It's just, happy, sad is subjective, but I've met a lot of young people in Europe, and I've seen that they don't feel hope, or they don't feel positive, they don't, and they're using old ways of thinking, pigeonholes, and politics too. I mean, politics is so seems to be so important in Europe, and in America, most intelligent people, politics is nothing. We expect there'll be some better politics, but I guess you know what I mean. Well, I keep changing the motto as we go along. For example, in 1960 we were saying turn on, tune in, and drop out. Turn out means go within. Everybody says that, so I think. Tune in means then make something beautiful of it. And drop out meant not just, amen, like that. Or not even like this, looking at your neighbor. Drop out means to drop out of any blind conformity to any system, whether it's religion or so that you drop out, because it's a lot harder to live as a dropout than it is, you're going along. It's easy, yeah. So that, but now I'm telling young people, turn on, tune in, and take over. Because now they're old enough that it's not even to, so many of them. No, the last bumper sticker I had, it was, they actually put it on cars. It's wonderful. It was, intelligence is the ultimate aphrodisiac. How do you drive him along and someone honks? Yeah. Yes, I believe that there's an enormous range of predetermined. Like, you take a seed of an oak tree, a little seed. It's predetermined that that's going to grow up, or you take your spermatozoa. I mean, I won't, but anyway, it's predetermined that that will go through. So I think that, yes, we're predetermined, space migration, we're predetermined to leave the planet. It's predetermined that we will live for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. It's just so that I think it's predetermined that we will master higher levels of intelligence that are beyond life, probably from other. I think these are predetermined. But then when you say, what's the beginning, or where does it end? I feel that as we get smarter, we will maybe we'll learn at the end that it's just all game, like Buddha said, and why bother? I don't know. But I have many arguments with my friends who are Buddhists, very intelligent Buddhists, like Allen Ginsberg, and they say, well, why bother? I mean, sure, you can live for 1,000 years, and you can have an erection for 1,000 hours, and you probably will find in outer space other species from other galaxies that are more intelligent, sure, do all that. But it's still all void. Because it's true that, even the atom is daily void. So you also come around to what Buddha said, and I say, no, that's laziness, because I think that if Buddha were alive today, she would be a geneticist, or she would be a computer expert, because we are growing, and we are expanding, and we are, and I do feel that in spite of the newspaper, I think there are more and more wonderful, intelligent human beings around the planet. So that I think there's still hope to get smarter. I just can't say where it began. Maybe it was Jehovah. Or when we get there, maybe it's all meaningless. But I think there's so much room to grow that, and I think it's silly to ask a question or to answer a question before you get to that level. Like you said, a 3-year-old baby will say, Mommy, what is sex? Well, what is life? Ice cream? He says, well, it's like playing with devil. Yes, but and I think many philosophers and religious leaders are saying, the end, the ultimate, when I think we take these steps that will lead us to get smarter so that we can say what is the end or what is the beginning.
I would like to ask you a question. My problem, or one of my problems with the New Age stuff or theme is that it's confusing. It's extremely confusing because there are so many authors that you could spend many lifetimes just to taste them all. Yeah? And I would like to know your prescription to deal with that confusion.
Number one, get a life extension pill. Number two, I do believe that each of us were made differently, and we have in sociobiology there are two kinds of wiring or castes. They call them, like in the insect hive, there are the warrior ants, and there are the worker ants, and there are the ants that dig down to get the water, and there's the queen, and all that. They're different So the division of labor. So I think that at this level, we have different kind of brains that are geared. Some of us can do things much better than others. For example, I think that the human New Age movement, present time, is too body oriented, and naturally the people that are wired to be good at that, naturally they can teach that. But I don't think everyone should have to be able to do yoga as well as, or to be able to dance as well as Van Halper or anything like that. You must learn enough of it, but then go on to another level. And at some stage, you'll find a particular stage that you're really best at, and then you can master that and teach that. But I think you have to learn all of them and feel comfortable in all of them. But if you learn one body motion, and you learn Tai Chi, then you don't have to learn 3 years Sufi Dervish, and then you have to learn 5 years Feldenkrais, and then 9 years deep body massage, and then 12 years standing on your finger like that. Although some people, yes, yeah, if you're really interested. But I think you must feel comfortable at every stage, like swimming. I want to be able to swim, and so, but you don't want to be, spend 8 hours a day being an Olympic champion. That's something to do. But to really know yourself, you have to open yourself up, and maybe I think that for many of us, our real stage is ahead of us. We haven't come to it yet, but it's good to master the other early stages. And for example, there are some people, one level of intelligence, and it's a tremendously wonderful level of intelligence, is to be a good parent. Now, I think parenthood is good for everyone to go through. My theory of evolution is that you should try to be good at every level, but you can't master every level, and you must be very modest about. I'm not a very good parent at certain levels, at certain ages I am, others I'm not. But I think there are some people like teachers or people that work with children and child therapists, and they're just wonderful, important, perhaps the most important division of labor. And then a lot of people feel guilty because you're not a perfect parent. I'm giving you a roundabout answer.
Could you tell something about the sources you are drawing your conviction or knowledge from, for instance, in the case of the predeterminations you were talking about before? Where are you getting this knowledge from?
Oh, well, everywhere. I read 3 or 4 newspapers a day. I read a lot of magazines, particularly science magazines. I scan television. I talk to intelligent people. I'll give you one example to kind of prepare us for tomorrow when we get into genetic and biological intelligence. I think someone asked about that. In Hollywood, we have a little problem in the hills with coyotes. You know, coyotes are the little, like little wolves, little foxes. Coyotes are so smart because we got rid of the buffalo, we got rid of the deer, we got rid of the wolves, we got rid of the bears. But these coyotes, they can come and get your garbage, and they just live up there and they watch and they try to trap them that they know the poison, but still, because they're building up more houses and the coyote population was getting lower. And they're saying, good. Only just one coyote came down and bit a little girl. Oh, and of course, when anything that hurts the babies, we got to kill all the coyotes. But then they discovered something terrible. The few coyotes that were left, instead of having 2 babies, the mothers were having 4 to 6 babies. Instead of having 1 boy and 1 girl, they were having 4 out of 6 girl coyotes. And that means that the coyote gene pool was multiplying the population by about 10 because each female can then have 6 and So, I'm going to talk today about 12 stages of evolution, or 12 kinds of intelligence, which are future to most human beings. We're talking about 12 stages to come for our species and for every individual. Although most of you in this room have gone into many of these future stages. From India, 4,000 years ago, where the first yogis used Soma and wrote the Vedas, to Athens, where Socrates and the Eleusinian mysteries went down underground and used some sort of plant to produce trances or visions, to 1970s and the 1980s, Salon at this conference, the first big step in activating yourself, your neurotechnology, is the discovery of the body. And from India, and from Persia, from the dervishes, and from the Greeks at the time of the Hellenistic period, to Feldenkrais and acupuncture, the first step in the discovery and the evolution of the self is you have to say, this is my body. In the Catholic Mass, hic est corpus meum, right? This is my body. The resurrection of the body. You have to say, my body is not an instrument of the state or of the Communist Party or of the Capitalist Party or the church, whatever. My body is my own. This is a tremendous step of independence and a big step in intelligence. And in the Western world, in America and Canada and Western Europe, in the last 20 years there has been an incredible revolution. 100 years ago in Freudian Vienna or in Victorian England, the body was the big taboo because the body is the key to being self. And everywhere, the religions, big monotheistic political religions, in every century, all over the world, the first thing they do is make you feel that your body is something terrible. The Catholic Church, they wear black. And in Freudian Vienna or in England, they, to see a young woman's ankle, or a young man's ankle, or have I left anybody out? Faith. It would be so shocking to see an ankle. The Ayatollah Khomeini, when he came into power, the first thing he did was to say the women cannot bathe at the beaches where the men bathe in Iran. Wherever you have the big religions or the big totalitarian forces, they hide the body. They make you feel ashamed of the body. And 100 years ago, there was no education about sex. I said yesterday, 100 years ago, textbooks from medical associations. There was a Harvard professor 100 years ago wrote a big book, and he said that masturbation or sexual intercourse before marriage causes the brain to rot, causes psychosis, causes the, you know what the amotivational syndrome is? They said if you smoke marijuana, you don't want to work, so that sex makes people lose interest in their job. And not only, if you masturbate, not only will you go to the mental hospital, but your children will be monsters. So they were saying 100 years ago about sex, what they're now saying about the brain and drugs that access the brain. Because once the human being says, this is my body, and I don't want to use it to hurt anybody else, but the key is, if I have divinity, or if I have many stages of intelligence within, if I have God within, then my body is the temple, or my body is the wonderful vehicle for higher intelligence inside. So then the person begins to take care of their body, and in America, and I'm sure in Germany now, we have diets, and we have massage, and we have tanks, and we have one of the biggest businesses in America today is body health and body beauty, and facelifts, and yoga, and health clubs, and jogging, and these kind of shoes and clothes, and all sorts of sports, and skiing, and scuba diving, and recreation. Development of the body is probably the biggest industry in America and probably in Germany today. And that's part of the, it's called the me generation, that came from the 60s when people said divinity is within, and people became, even in medicine, see, before the 1960s and 70s, your body belonged to the doctor. And if you were sick, they put you in a factory like a hospital, and the doctor would come and fix you, and then you'd go out. Most young, intelligent Americans, and I'm sure it's true of Germany too, now realize that you are responsible for your own health, and no doctor. As a matter of fact, hospitals in America, even most doctors will admit, a hospital is a warehouse for disease. There's all sick people come here in the hospital, and they leave their germs, and they go out. So that in many hospitals in America, there are all these strains of diseases in the hospital. So the first future level of intelligence has to do with the body. And there are 3 stages of body intelligence. First is you just enjoy your body. And in America, the way this happened, probably in Germany too, Americans began to discover their body. They needed help to do this. And the help came in the form of drugs. So that in the 1960s and now 1970s, now 1980s, 65 to 70 million Americans have used marijuana. Many of them no longer, but they have used it, and they've learned how to use it. And drugs are access codes to the computer, so that if you really have mastered the yoga or the method of marijuana, you don't have to smoke it all the time. The working person in America, and I'm sure this is true in Germany, is wearing Gucci and Gloria Vanderbilt and fixing the hair. Only the aristocrats did that before. See, because the aristocrats, the rich, so forth, have always considered, well, I want myself as my body, and it's always been the rich and the dukes and the cardinals that have had free sexuality and free drugs and so forth. But in the 1960s and 70s in America, for the first time, there's this mass movement of backpacking and climbing and camping, and then there's fashion, health, body management, aesthetics. Everyone's running around painting, and everyone in America, there are ballet classes in Missouri. Missouri's like, I don't know. I'm afraid to say. Erotics, there's been this tremendous sexual revolution in America in the last 20 years, and in Europe too, where there are no longer 2 sexes. See, first there were 2 sexes, male and none. And then 2 and 3 and 4 now, but there's even celibacy now. It's chic to be celibate. So that all this is signs that people are individually deciding how they want to fix their hair, how they want to look, how they want to enjoy their life, their body, sensuality, perfume, like the football players, cologne, and now the people who run the big churches or the people who run the big government, they don't like that because they say this is self-indulgence. Well, we who are interested in increasing intelligence, one of my jobs is to go around and say to people, you should be self-reliant, you should self-discover, you should be self-indulgent. Because you either indulge yourself, or you're indulging the commissar, or the chancellor, or... Now, the paradox of being an intelligent person, or the paradox of having a self, and managing a self, and taking care of yourself, is this. It is harder work to be self-reliant than it is to be a follower. It's so easy before. You cut your hair just like the soldiers, and you wore the same clothes, and you went to the same factory, you like that, and you went back and you made love the same way, or not. It's hard to have to figure out, what do I really feel I want? It's much harder to be a self than to be a conforming person. That's called, what I'm talking now is the discovery of body intelligence. Life is no longer to just feed yourself or to please the establishment. Life, at this level of intelligence, is an art. And in one way, you're an artist, you're God, the artist. Or it's neurotechnology of aesthetics and hedonics, hedonism, and neurotics. Now, hedonism, which is food. In America now, they have gourmet foods. You go into any chain store, and you find nuts from Honolulu, and you find special rice from China, and you find best beer from Germany, and you find the best wines, and this is the average middle-class person is buying herring from Denmark and buying beer from the Philippines, so that instead of just one beer or one mashed potatoes and meat, there are hundreds of ways to please the taste. The same thing is true about music and sound, high fidelity, and so that the average American, and I'm sure it's true of the average German working person now, is spending more and more percentage of money on the art of living. Now, if you want to get a hi-fi set, it's hard work. You have to read, you have to listen, what kind of music you want, quadraphonic, you have to study Sony, Mitsubishi, Ura, you have to test. I mean, it's so easy before, you just turn on the radio and now, it requires intelligence, it requires action, it requires science. Science of aesthetic living. And sex, too. Sex is 1,000 times more complicated now than it was 20, 30 years ago. Because in those days, well, there's... oh, you go to the Reeperbahn, maybe, like that. But even the Reeperbahn now, there are 1,000 different types, right? So, I'm talking about the first levels of the future. In the past, as we were struggling as a species, it was intelligence was to eat. And the intelligence was to protect yourself. And then the intelligence was to build shelter and been through these early stages. But as we go into the future, what is the purpose of life? To eat? Well, that's like an animal. What is the purpose of life? To defend yourself? Well, that's like a dinosaur. What is the purpose of life? To Deutschland over alles? Yeah. No. Or to fight for Christ? No. Fight for the Ayatollah against Iraq? No. What is the purpose of life? The purpose of life now is to, yes, you have enough to eat, and you give to food to other people, because if you have food and they don't, See, the intelligent person is a good person because, you know that you can't be happy if your neighbor is starving or if you're pushing down your neighbor, so you have to, and the intelligent person also, learns to mind your own business. You know what I mean by that? That you don't try to go around telling everyone else what to do. Leben lassen. That's intelligent. You get plenty of space for other people to grow too. So, what is the purpose of life? The purpose of life at a higher level now is art, beauty, erotics, aesthetics, hedonics. At the level of sound, of high five. The first step, people just get the record, you play the record, you listen, and then the active aesthetic engineering, or aesthetic or erotic engineering involves what's known as a yoga. And then the next stage would be hooking this up with somebody else. So that, at every stage of intelligence, you have to learn how to receive and then to master it, and then you have to share it and transmit it. Now, I said that the brain, these levels of intelligence that I'm going to define are all based upon morphology or physiology, anatomy. I'm not just making them up in my mind. The body is the first. The second level of stage of future intelligence is the brain. At every level, you have to have training, and you have to have hardware. You have to have technology. Like in order to know what to read, we have to have books, we have to have paper, we have to have pencil, we have to read. And this seminar is basically a seminar on how to increase your bodily intelligence. And there's hardware, there's the candles, and there was everything I'm talking about is hardware to learn how to increase your intelligence at that level. To smoke marijuana, for example, and by the way, there are drugs that can help you at every level of intelligence, or help you get back to any level of intelligence. The drug for aesthetics, erotics, hedonics, art, the bodily drug is marijuana. You smoke marijuana and you get very hungry. You smoke marijuana and music slows down. You smoke marijuana and time stretches out, so that if you're making love, it just goes on and on and on. The music goes on and on and on. You're driving a car to marijuana, you drive for 12 hours, and you've only gone two blocks. Now, there is a technique in smoking marijuana, and many people, the first time they smoke marijuana, they get paranoid because they're so sensitive. They think that, the first time they smoke marijuana, they get very nervous and they don't feel anything. Or they smoke marijuana and they just eat. And, there are lots of Hollywood stars that have given them marijuana because it makes them fat. Also, at every level of intelligence, you can overdo it, so that reading is wonderful. Reading books are wonderful. But if you read all the time, you are a very narrow person. And the same thing is true of any bodily art. It's wonderful to be able to do Tai Chi, but if you do Tai Chi all the time and you think that's all there is, and like that, then, and the same thing is true of marijuana. Marijuana is a very special key to intelligence. In the 60s and early 70s, there were lots of people who would get up in the morning and they'd lie in bed and reach over and they get a joint and they light it. Hello, Sunday. Yeah. And they just kind of float through the day. Well, it's good to have an experience like that. All these experiences are good, but you simply cannot go through life just like floating in this situation. So that it is stupid to use marijuana and to go to class where you want to learn quickly.
To go to Vietnam.
Yeah, right, yeah, right. The way the DNA has designed the brain, it's fantastic. For example, when Noah learns how to talk, and there's a man named Noam Chomsky from Harvard, who's a linguist, first written, it's a certain age when that clicks on. And when a new circuit of the brain clicks on, Noah will make an imprint. You imprint the immediate environment. Do you know the experiments of Lorenz with, you know what imprinting is? Imprinting is in fowl and mammals, and in human beings too. There is a critical period after a little baby goose or gosling is born. There's a period of a few hours that an imprint takes place. And whatever moves, the goose will imprint that as its mother. And you know the story about Lorenz. He walks along, and then all the little geese follow him, and then they put worms in his ear, and they want to make love to him, you know. And they trained chickens to imprint ping pong balls, soccer footballs. Or there was the case of the little baby giraffe, and the hunters killed the mother just after the baby was born, and the hunter's jeep came up, so the giraffe imprinted the jeep and wanted to suckle the jeep, and then when it got older it wanted to fuck the jeep. Now, that happens to us too. See, imprinting is a blind fixing of something in the environment at that critical period. Now, 99 times out of 100, the first moving object is the mother. So it's okay. It's only when they've done all sorts of experiments to study how imprinting takes place. So isn't it wonderful? If Noah was born in China, Noah would imprint Chinese language. Noah will probably imprint German. So it's well known that a baby, or a young child, can pick up a language like that, whereas an adult, it's very hard to learn another language. That's because of imprinting. Now, imprinting continues at every stage of individual development. It's well known that the first, when the sexual brain turns on, no, the red light's on for sex. The first sexual experience you have are very important. And they're, you know, Kraft Ebing and all the cases. If your first orgasm was when you were being spanked by a maid with red bloomers, you run around finding a big, you know, fat woman with red bloomers. In food too, there's a phenomenon. See, we're talking about immediate imprinting or learning or programming. It's called the Bernays sauce syndrome. There was a psychologist who was a Skinnerian psychologist, and he believed in conditioning and reward and punishment and reward and punishment and reinforcement And he went to a restaurant and he had a steak with béarnaise sauce, but there's something wrong with it. And he got very, very sick. So the next day he's driving to the university and he went by the restaurant and he got sick. Anytime he sees béarnaise sauce, that's one-shot learning. One shot. How can you do that? If you can learn, that's what imprinting or reprogramming is of the brain. Now, this is a wonderful, wonderful DNA program that babies are being born, geese are being born, giraffes are being born, human beings are being born all over the world, and they imprint as reality what's there immediately at the right time. And 99 times out of 100, that's okay.
You're listening to the Psychedelic Salon, where people are changing their lives one thought at a time.
And that is where tape 2 of 4 cut off. I'll probably go ahead and play the remaining 3 tapes, but I'm going to have to preview them first to see if it'll be worth our time to listen to them. But in the first part of the tape that we just listened to, I seem to remember him saying a couple things about other topics that I wanted to hear, so we'll probably be listening to the next tape together in a week or so. However, I've got to kind of wrap things up right now because I've got to start packing, because in the morning my wife and I will be driving to the Salon Institute near Big Sur, California, where Bruce Damer and I will be leading a weekend workshop titled Terence McKenna Beyond 2012. And probably by next month you'll be able to hear most of that workshop in some of our future podcasts. Additionally, I understand that the next 2 installments of the Terence McKenna workshop held on the Hawaiian island of Maui in 1994 are now winging their way to me. So our summer fair here in the Salon looks like it's going to be more talks from Leary, McKenna, Damer, and myself. And hopefully I'll come up with a few other talks to add some more variety to the mix as well. Now, before I go, there are 2 other things I'd like to mention. One is that our fellow saloner and good friend of mine, Sheldon Norberg, is about halfway through a Kickstarter campaign to raise the funds needed to create a film version of his one-man play, Confessions of a Dope Dealer. And if you remember, we had Sheldon as a guest speaker here in the Salon way back in podcast number 64. It's really been too long now since Sheldon has performed this play on the stage, which he did in New York City, San Francisco, and Burning Man, among other places. In fact, I was lucky enough to see the full performance at Burning Man a few years ago and a partial performance at one of the Mind States conferences. And I'm here to tell you that I rate it right up there with Hal Holbrook's one-man show about Mark Twain. Of course, as much as I like Mark Twain, I have to admit that Sheldon's performance and subject matter actually had more appeal for me. Anyway, I'll put a link to his campaign in the program notes to this podcast in the event that you can help him out. And as you know, you can find the program notes for these podcasts via psychedelicsalon.us. Now, there's one more thing that I want to mention, and it's a complete sci-fi geek out. And I suspect that a good number of our fellow saloners have read William Gibson's novel, Neuromancer. And if you're like me, you've probably read it more than once. Well, not since my first read of Neuromancer have I had so much fun reading a science fiction novel. It's called Ready Player One and is by Ernest Cline. And I actually wouldn't be surprised if you've already read it. But if you haven't, and if you've ever played a video game or an arcade game, or used a Trash 80, a Commodore 64, or enjoyed one of William Gibson's novels, then, well, I don't think you'll be able to put this book down. Not only is it a fast-moving and well-thought-out story, it's probably the best piece of 1980s geekdom that exists. So if you're a geek, a science fiction fan, or simply a survivor of the 1980s, I think that you will truly enjoy this book. Oh, and one last thing. While preparing for the Salon workshop, I put together a little video biography that I've titled From Larry to Lorenzo, the first 70 years. Unfortunately, there isn't going to be enough time for me to show that at the workshop and still get in some of the other things that I want to cover. So instead of keeping it only for that event, I've instead posted it on my blog, and I'll add it to the program notes for this podcast when I get a chance and if I remember. But since I'm spending most of my time working on other writing, it's become quite obvious that I'm never going to be getting around to writing an autobiography, not that any but my closest friends would even be interested. However, if you want a very brief look at how a small-town Irish Catholic boy morphed into the psychedelic podfather, you can check out this video piece in which I cover my life at the rate of 12 seconds per year, which, now that I think about it, is about how fast it seems to have taken place for me. Anyway, that's going to do it for today, and so this is Lorenzo, signing off from Cyberdelic Space. Be well, my friends.